probably genetic. Oh,
I figured it out. I had to change my screen like Alex Gross suggested, so thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay, so here we are in the middle, but I'll take it up to that point. We've got that much done. Fantastic. So perfume, of course, we all have a lot of questions about fragrance. And I think one of the webinars that we're going to do is going to address how you create a chemical policy. And it will be done by the cute and darling Robin Watkins, who is brilliant when it comes to fragrance and fragrance formulations. And she'll talk about how you do that. And that will help you decide what questions to ask, what parameters you want to set. Fragrance is a useful word because sometimes you don't want people to know what's in your special blend, and proprietary is not a real thing. So you have to use the existing words that FDA allows, fragrance being one of them. Chlorphenicin is a preservative. A lot of people say it's a low risk preservative. It's preservatives are preservatives. We have to have them. I think there's better ones and worse ones, but you'll notice there's quite a few preservatives in here. Chlorphenicin, 1,2-hexandiol, probably the lactic acid is adding to the preservation. The palmitoyl tetrapeptide might be adding to that. And caprylyl glycol actually helps in preservative systems. So these are things that collectively you have to kind of look at each of them and make decisions based again on what is its source, what are all those other questions that I keep saying over and over again, how is it made, what is it made from, where does it come from? These are things that you kind of start to have to make value judgments on preservation. And that's something that I think over time will get better and better. The rest of this stuff, sodium gluconate is also another preservative material. It's actually a very safe one. And then the gums, those come from plants. Lysolecithin comes from a plant. This is a seaweed powder, so that's fine. Adenosine is an amino acid, and you'd want to ask them, what does this come from? Lactic acid, you'd want to, again, what does this come from? Lactic acid can be synthetic, or it can be an extract from olive leaves. So that's kind of how I look at things. When I look at a list, I start going through things. Tocopherols, you want to know if it's synthetic or not. Citric acid, usually citric acid is made from corn, which people, because of the name, always think it's not. They're always surprised to hear that. But again, is it a genetically modified material? And is that an issue to you? So it depends on the claims you're making for your product. So I'm going to look quickly. There's this chat. I know you can see my cursor.
There's no real substantive questions yet, but I'm just going to jump in to remind people that we all have an amazing resource in Gay Timmons here, and if you have a specific ingredient, obviously that's specific to your brand. I mean, I'm sure Gay will take it offline with you, but if you have anything high level or even anything kind of specific, please use this hour to your benefit, because we're all here for the same reason. We want to help the industry, do things the right way, and we believe in the smaller, passionate brands and feel like we need access to the right information. So
Kara is on the board, NOHBA, and was a founding member as well. So, okay, so that's like a really fast and dirty analysis of how I look at things, and we'll take a little break and you can ask questions of me. I have like 2 or 3 other slides. This one, just very quickly, you want to understand what is regulated. And a lot of that has to do with what countries you want to sell in. So that's something to keep in mind. You want to ask your vendors if they can give you these documents, like the Principles of Green Chemistry. Do you know what country it's from and how it's made? Do you have a definition for the words you market with? I keep pounding on that because I find that all too often people don't have those definitions. And then, bottom line, again, you just need to be clear about yourself. And Lindsay's going to talk about the laundry list of documents that and regulatory information that she needs to get for a private label lab. And then in the third webinar, again, Robin and Aubrey Thompson will be talking about how you define your policies and how you really clarify what you're trying to get at as a brand. And that helps a lot in asking questions about ingredients. And a note on lawsuits. There have been really a lot of lawsuits. I'd say the biggest problem that are these three things right here. Don't say 100% anything unless you know it's 100% and you can document that. And you could stand in front of a judge and prove it with a bunch of paper. All natural, same thing. When you use the word all, you better be able to document that it's all. Free, phthalate free, this free, that free. This is not even allowed in the EU. And for one thing, for another thing, phthalates, for example, are used in so many different things. They're used to keep plastic tubing soft. So if you have a product on a production line and it goes through plastic tubing, because there's some natural leaching from that phthalate material, whichever one it is, it may show up in parts per billion if your product were tested. So I do not think people should tempt that particular fate. And then we're going to talk about support documentation. If you're using non-certified materials, these are things you can get a production flow chart. You can get affidavits signed by the owner, the manufacturer. You can ask for compositional analysis. Some people won't give it to you. Most people will, or they'll give you a range. You can get a content statement from an organic certifier. That's important if you do organic, because if I make an extract and I use alcohol to preserve it, so I've got 65% water, 5% herbs, and 30% alcohol, ethanol to preserve it. That means I have a 35% organic content. The water is not counted. So when you're doing your formula calculation for organic content in the United States, which is different than the calculation they do in Europe, you need to understand that you have to have that document from the certifier. And it's the certifier who issues it, not the supplier. I can't issue that to you. I have to go to my certifier and have them make it. And then we're going to have our document list. And then real quickly, there's some resources on here. And here's that definition that I told you I had included. And
okay, we got a question from Justine. What about ferments for preservation, like lucidol?
Lucidol?
Yeah, lucidol.
Everything I know about lucidol sounds like it's pretty good. I've seen the process flow chart. It's been approved for use in organic, which means, so there's a difference between certified as organic and approved for use. Keep that distinction in mind. And that means that a chemist has looked at the process by which they make that material and find it compliant with the principles of green chemistry, renewable resources. The one thing that I know about preservatives and also just about newer materials is that a lot of people do not invest in the toxicology research that they're supposed to have. And you want to know that. You want to know what's the irritation level, especially of preservatives, and the supplier should be accountable for that and give that to you. Anything else on that in the general category of ingredients that I can help with?
Phenyl ethyl alcohol. We have someone saying that it comes from that theirs says it comes from roses.
No, it probably, well, there is a very expensive one that is made from roses. I remember seeing it years ago. I haven't seen it on the market in a long time because it was so expensive that they couldn't get anybody to buy it.
What is it generally made from?
It was made from roses, but generally it's a synthetic.
Yeah.
But there's also a GMM version of it. I think that I'm not going to say their name because I don't want to disclose something they haven't disclosed that I happen to know about them. But basically, it's a GMM material, and it's very effective, and I think it probably works pretty well. But when somebody says something comes from something, you need to find a way to get a verification of that. I have production flowcharts for every oil I sell, for every ingredient I sell. I can tell you, when it was harvested, how it was harvested, what they did with that, how they break it down till they get it to the point where it's actually an ingredient.
So do you recommend this person request a production flow chart for the ingredient, or is that like, are they going to get laughed at basically by asking that?
If they get laughed at, then they don't want to use it. They should ask for it. Yeah, I mean, the way I learned to ask these questions is one of my first customers was Aveda, and Aveda is owned by Estee Lauder, and Estee Lauder is run by attorneys and penny pinchers, accountants. And so when they want regulatory information, I had to learn how to find all of these documents. And I go back to what I said a few minutes ago, which is, if you're going to make I don't care what the claim is, and that's a claim. This is made from roses. Okay. That's a claim. Could you stand in front of a judge and prove the claim if you translate that claim onto your product? You're making a promise to the consumer. We are not just regulated by FDA. We are regulated by FDA, the FTC, which is, looks at truth in labeling, and by EPA for safety, because these are chemicals. And, and then by USDA if you're using any food type ingredients. So we have.
So for this ingredient specifically, and another individual jumped in saying that they had the same one. It really is, again, like the point of this is trying to equip everybody with the right language and resources to be able to get all of that information. And so the goal is to say, can you provide me with a flow chart showing how we get to the rose and what else is in this, basically.
Right. Yeah. And one of the ways you can get around that too is when I said you need to specify what markets you want to sell in, the EU requires a safety assessment for every formula. And anybody who's been in this industry for any period of time will know that the EU requires proof. They require documentation in your product ingredient file. So even if you're not going to go to Europe, you can just say, oh, I'm going to sell to Europe and I need this for my safety assessment. And then they know they have to give it to you. They will not give you anything you don't ask for. That's really important to remember. Nobody is going to create extra work. Nobody is going to give you anything that you don't specifically ask for. I give everybody a technical data sheet, which has most of this information, an SDS and my organic cert. I have 98% of all the information they need. I even have my compositional breakdown on my technical data sheets. Most people don't do it that way. So with that, Lindsay, you want to take it away and you just tell me when to scroll this baby up a little more.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thanks, Gay. So as I had mentioned before, I work for Elevation Labs, and we are a contract manufacturer who specialize in natural and organic products. Our customers distribute their products globally and to a variety of retailers. So my job as the regulatory specialist is to provide our customers with raw material data, formula data. I assist them with their IL development, retail compliance, and blacklist reviews. And I also help to maintain our own organic and quality certifications here at our plant. I will say that I enjoy the challenge of this ever-changing environment. And Gay, you have taught me so much. I've only worked for Elevation here for 1 year, but I do have over 15 years experience in the manufacturing industry. Just to kind of reiterate what Gay had said, we have to analyze our ingredients, and you cannot be shy about these requests. Sometimes you really have to dig to get your answers, but it's very important. I had kind of compiled a quick list here that are common documents that you'll need for natural and organic products. the beauty of natural and organic products is that a lot of times these products do not inherently contain chemicals of concern. So there's a lot of items that I didn't address on here because these products will not contain those chemicals of concern. So just quickly go through this list. Allergens are always a very big concern, food and EU. I had accidentally deleted the EU reference off this document, so I apologize. EU allergens would be contained in our fragrances, and depending on where you're going to be distributing, what market, you will have to declare these, calculate them out to see if you need to declare them, but you will have to declare them on your label. Vegan statements are very important. As Gay had mentioned, biodegradable. Of course, we have to always keep a certificate of analysis, CITES certification that usually does not apply. Compositional breakdown, very important to know if there's any chemicals of concern in there, preservatives, etc. If you have any certifications, we personally deal with Cosmos quite a bit, as well as NSF and organic. Country of origin, that's a concern if you are going to be making some sort of a claim. Diethylene glycol, that's going to be in your glycerins. Fair trade, global compliance. Gluten, you need to know that it has been tested. GRAS status, sometimes that will come up, especially if you're going for products that may be potentially ingested, or toothpaste, such as something like that. We have halal and kosher certification, heavy metal contents. IFRA compliance, that's going to go with your EU allergens. Manufacture process, very important. I know that Gay had mentioned that many times. The no animal testing, and if it has been tested, we need to know the last testing date for that product. We have the non-GMO. That is also, testing is required. Organic certificate, that one's pretty self-explanatory, but we want to make sure we always have a current certificate on file, just in case the certification lapsed. So you always want to make sure you have current documents. Origin, very important, just as you guys had spoke about the alcohol, if it was derived from roses or synthetic, that's how you're going to determine that, and as well as with your compositional breakdown. Preservatives, are those present? What are they? Prop 65 compliance is very big, obviously, with the state of California. RSPO, or mass balance certification of any palm-derived ingredients. So that kind of wraps you right back up to that compositional breakdown or the origin of your ingredient. Safety data sheet, that's basic. Sewer sludge or radiation, that's going to go hand in hand with your organic compliance. Specification sheet, that's going to give you some very basics, but it's also very important to compare that with your C of A. Synthetic fragrance or dye content, usually that is not desired at all in these products, and then your technical data sheet. So these are just kind of a basic list that I always request for almost all of these ingredients that I work with. And so I hope it's helpful to kind of see these in one place and help you to know what to ask for and to not be shy about asking for all the information that you need.
And this is something we're going to circulate afterwards too, right?
Yes. Yeah. One thing I would point out, well, first a question for you, Lindsay, just comparing experience here. Do you get, everybody seems to have a completely different way of doing these documents. There's no standardization. Is that your experience as well?
Yes, because sometimes you'll get one statement that outlines almost everything you need, and sometimes you'll get it piecemeal and you'll have to keep requesting and requesting and requesting. Sometimes if I know the vendor quite well and I know that they have a really extensive database of documents, I will just ask for all documents on file. I'm not shy about it because I know that I will need to review every point of that product. So
yeah, that kind of drives me nuts. And some people are surprised to find out that this is not a regulated part of the industry. A spec sheet can be, I have some spec sheets that are 2 or 3 pages long, like the test they have to do for glycerin, or 1 page with just 3 little things on it, which is normally what you would see for a lot of oils and sort of basic pretty standardized ingredients.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and it also has to deal with if you're dealing with a single ingredient or if you're dealing with something that has multiple ingredients, then sometimes you have to dig obviously even further.
Yeah, it's a challenge. So, and then I just want to point out IFRA in the middle of this list, IFRA compliance. IFRA stands for the International Fragrance Association. And there are usually 2 documents that go with IFRA. So the IFRA compliance document actually says that fragrance, whether it's an essential oil or a true compounded fragrance or something in between, the percent you can use given the type of application. So they have developed a system, a safety system. So obviously something that's going to be in a deodorant that goes on shaved skin under your arm, which is going to be very absorptive, is going to have a different safe use level than something that goes in a wash off conditioner or shampoo or body soap. Something that goes on your lips or is a toothpaste or a mouthwash, which can sometimes come into these, you still have to do the same thing as you do here. Again, you're going to want to know what level is a safe level of usage for this particular thing, for this particular substance, whether it's lavender oil or some very high-end fragrance. So you can always ask for that, and a really professional fragrance house will be able to provide it.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that.
That's a weird one. And so anybody, what other questions do people have? And I will send this out to anybody who asks us for it. Or maybe I can post it on the website. Oops, I think what I wanted to do was no share. I don't want to share. I want to end share. And now I can't see that. Tara, can you end the share?
End the recording, you mean?
No, just the share.
Oh yeah.
I started sharing it before I gave you the hosting.
I don't think I can end. Let's see.
They're just messing with us, those people.
I'm pretty bad at Zoom. Did that do something?
Well, now I can see everything on your screen, I think. I can see your screen.
Okay, so let's not do that. Stop share. All right. So I don't know how to stop you.
Oh, no, okay. Now I think you're good now. I think you're good because it looks to me like it's just the. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, so let's see. Kendra, Justine, a number of people are asking for a copy of the presentation.
Okay.
And I don't see any specific questions. Do you suggest we make all our own documents? That's actually a really great question.
If you have a finished product, you have to have your own document for your product. Right? So I sell certain stuff. I mean, I'm a simplified version because we sell ingredients. I actually sell 3 levels of things. I have my own in-house technical data sheet with an embedded spec, my SDSs. Those have my letterhead. I make those documents. If I make a finished product for someone, which we do a little bit of, I make them a spec and an SDS for that finished product. And that means I test it. If I make an oil blend for a face blend and I bottle it, and then I send it off to the lab and I test it for certain things for each batch. They then could and should put that data on their own letterhead. Because if you sell to certain websites, I think, doesn't Amazon ask for an SDS for everything? I'm pretty sure they do. One of you guys
proactively ask for it, but if there's any kind of issue, they ask for it, I think.
Okay. But I mean, and I do want to stress one thing about SDSs. They're safety documents. They're not going to give you a lot of data about the material. They are not quality documents. It's a safety data sheet. And it really has to do with people who are flying and driving and moving and working with raw materials more than anything else, and even a finished product. So that's what those are for. They're not really quality. You want a spec sheet and a technical data sheet and a composition sheet. I think those would always be my top 3 that I want, plus my certificate of analysis for each batch. So yeah, I think if you have a finished product, you should have your own spec sheet for your finished product. And it doesn't have to be elaborate. It can be, you always have 2 categories of data on a spec sheet. One is just generally the what they call organoleptic, which means how do you describe it with your senses? So appearance, color, aroma, right? So if it's virgin coconut oil, if it's in a solid state, it's liquid when, at this temp, and it's solid at that temp, and it's white when it's solid, and the odor is characteristic of fresh coconut. And then the analytical data. And so depending on the kind of material you have different analytical data. So for example, the analytical data for an oil, you're going to want to know how fresh it is. And so you want to see the peroxide value. But if you have something that has water activity, you're going to want to know the pH. That's an important data point if you're for a chemist or for a formulator, and just to know what is happening with your material. And you're going to want to know other aspects of it. I just found out today that one of the labs that I've been working with has just added the ability also to test essential oils. And that's been a really hard thing to find. So somebody has their hand up. I love that.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of last minute questions.
Okay, go ahead, Justine.
Can I thank you so much for having this? And my question is really around, we make some of our own raw ingredients as well, and we make them on our own microfarm. We don't make claims on purpose on any of our products, really. We just show through social media marketing, through our website, how we're going about making our products. But you would suggest having, let's just say, currently this second I'm making a hydrosol. I would go through and make a data sheet on that hydrosol for our back end before I fold it into our products. And then make a separate one for our products. So
yes.
2.
Ideally, yes. When you have a baby business, a micro business, there's this cart and horse problem of, you make something and then you make something with it. I've worked with a lot of people over the years. As you grow, if you want to go into certain markets, you have to have those documents. Or if FDA ever shows up, you have to have some of those documents. So you want to have some fundamental documents. I mean, if nothing else, I would have my finished product and I would test it to know it, I would run a APC, which is aerobic plate count. Like if it's an emulsion, if it's got, if you're doing hydrosols, you want to know if there's bacteria in there.
And we do, we plate everything on agar and then incubate it and track all the results of it. And we have a whole binder where we track all of that, but we're not making for individual, calendula, let's say, we're drying that and then weighing it and putting it in our inventory system. And then we infuse it into oils, but we're not categorizing it any further. And so I guess my question, you kind of answered it, but thank you. Because it's a little bit more gray almost when you're making your own.
Yes, it's not gray when you have to go to another market. But if you're doing it all internally, and I work with a lot of small producers who do this, so I'm quite familiar with it. You just want to make sure that, it sounds to me like you have some consistency, some good practices to track what you're doing. So you understand the principles and you're implementing the principles of keeping those records. So that's fantastic, because that gives you the ability, if you ever needed to create those documents. But you may not need those documents given that the data you've collected.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. This was so illuminating, and I'll let other people get to you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that was an awesome back and forth. Gay, we got another follow-up question on propanediol. I'm sure I'm butchering that. Propanediol. Gosh, yeah. I'm never going to get them right. But just, is there a non-GMO option? Like, could you just like dial down on that ingredient for us a little bit more?
I believe there is somebody in Brazil. I know there's somebody in Brazil who makes one from sugarcane, and sugarcane is currently not genetically modified. So yes, there is. There's also, I think there's one out of Korea. And it just may take a little more work on Google to find it, but they are out there.
And then just again, if the producer is making the claims, just asking for mapping and everything. And then we got another great question about perfume materials. If they're absolutes, okay. It's in the chat, you could read it too, Gabe, but what should we request for perfume materials that are absolutes between the hexane and ethanol solvents?
Oh, okay. So usually it depends on the size of the producer. So if you have, I talked to a woman who makes perfume for people. She's highly specialized and evidently financially very successful. She had never seen a spec in her life. She had no idea. And she all of a sudden had the opportunity to go to a much larger market, like to the Far East or something, but she couldn't do it because she didn't have any documents. So you've got different layers, right? So you have the supplier of the raw materials for perfumes. They should have a statement on residual hexane. If they are, like a lot of jasmine, and I think the absolutes, they use absolutes. I guess they use alcohols to standardize absolutes, but one of them they use hexanes. And yeah, you need a statement from the raw material producer telling you if there's any residual hexane. It's a pretty easy test. Most of them have it. And quite honestly, it's not really there. It's just sort of an unfortunate way they do it. You can avoid hexanes by using CO2 extracts. You get the same bang for your buck in terms of the raw material if you use a CO2, if that's any help. Ethanol is completely volatile. You asked about ethanol. Actually, hexane is too. So volatile means it dissipates into the atmosphere. Ethanol is not a problem because it's just not environmentally a problem. Hexane is a problem because it's a petrochemical. And then it's connected to that whole, the petrochemical highway of production. But both of them do dissipate. It's not like they're ever going to be in your finished product to give you an analytical answer. But then there's an environmental aspect. So that's a decision you have to make about your brand and the choices you make.
All right, now we're at time.
Okay. Ooh, we did good.
Thank you so much, Gay. I'm dropping the link to the upcoming events. The next two are scheduled, and then the rest of the year will be scheduled out actually shortly. So that's in the chat. And again, thank you to everybody that came. Thank you so much, Gay, for being the fearless leader always. And please consider this just a monthly collective of like-minded individuals and brands, and usually smaller, very passionate brands that are trying to do this the right way, for us to share information and questions back and forth and learn from each other. And there is going to be this monthly webinar, which will most likely be free for at least the first half of the year, maybe the rest of the year, depending on a couple different things. But there's also the ability to join NOHBA and just stay up to date through Gay's newsletters on everything from regulatory stuff to all of the magic that you talk about, Gay, on a regular basis. I have learned so much from you, and it's exciting to open up your brain and knowledge to more people this year. And that's what we're going to do. So
thank you. And thank you everybody who joined us. So we're probably, I don't know if I've said this to you, but Tara, but we're going to kind of revisit the rates for membership because we would like it to be more available. And so we'll let you know about that. I think you can get the newsletter for NOHBA, whether you're a member or not. So you can sign up for that on the website. And if it doesn't work, just shoot me a note. I'm all over the internet. You can find me. It's just gay@ooorganic.com. And so we'll keep you updated on how we change things. And I think for some baby brands, we're probably going to have some opportunities for, a year's free membership kind of thing as well. So we're trying to reinvigorate after COVID, like the rest of the world. And if you're in New York, there's going to be an SCC show in May. SCC shows is Society of Cosmetic Chemists. They're huge ingredient shows. The shows themselves are free. It's a tremendous way to learn about what's out there. And they have a lot of great seminars as well. So I highly encourage, you don't have to be an SCC member to go to that show. Anybody can go. So